What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and recently we have passed over 20,000 subscribers, which first I want to say thank you guys so much for your support that you have given me. It really means a lot to me. The fact that even 20 people want to watch the stuff I make is crazy, let alone 20,000. And to celebrate, I wanted to do another Q&A video similar to the one that I did almost a year ago at this point. So maybe I'll start doing this as kind of a yearly thing. Let me know if you guys would like that. So I made a post for you guys to give me your questions on YouTube. And honestly, I was going to give it a little bit more time to let some more questions come in. But there have been a lot of questions that have already come in that I'm really excited to answer. But you can always keep more questions coming either on YouTube or Discord, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. It just really means a lot to me that you guys have these kinds of questions to ask. So I'm just very looking forward to answering them. But without further ado, let's go and do what kind of questions you guys have for me. And if you like this kind of stuff, be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you're new here and you like what you see, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that way you never miss another upload. What would you like to see in Season 6 of DRG? So starting off with the DRG question strong. Season 6, I mean, really anything could happen. I would like to see another new mission type, even though I know we just got a new one, it might be a lot to ask for. Since we got new overclocks for the primary weapons, I feel like new overclocks for the secondary weapons would just make the most sense, at least in my opinion. Obviously, I think a lot of people are on the same boat with me on this, but a perk rework would be phenomenal. I think that that is something that is drastically in need in DeepRockGalactic, but ultimately whatever the devs decide to do, I really will not be too upset about. They could do infinite number of things that I would be okay with, but yeah, I guess I would have to say secondary overclocks, perk rework, maybe a new mission type, and of course some more enemies to fight are always a good thing. Are you purple? Last time I checked, no, but it's been a while, so I might have to check again. What is a game unrelated to DRG that you would like to recommend to other people? I can make a whole video on that concept alone. And in fact, I have done a couple of videos before talking about games that are like DeepRockGalactic, that if you like that, you would probably like these types of games. Basically, any of those ones I would recommend, but outside of that, basically just ultimately that is going to come down to a lot of your personal preference as to what you like out of games versus me. And for me, I'm kind of a bad person to ask this particular type of question because I have really bad gaming ADHD, where sometimes I'll just play something and I will just immediately lose all focus on it and want to play something else or vice versa. And depending on what I'm interested in that particular week, kind of determines my focus. Like right now, I am in a very heavy Space Marine 2 and Final Fantasy 14 mood. So those are kind of the two games that are taking up a lot of my brain capacity, as well as DeepRockGalactic as well. But basically anything where you are playing with just your buddies and having a good time, any sort of cooperative game, whether it be a roguelike shooter or anything akin to that sort of style. I'm a big fan of survival games, so things like Valheim, Abiotic Factor, B Rising, just sort of very cooperative focus games are what I would probably recommend to most people. Stay away from the hyper competitive shooters, at least that's what I would say. In DRG, there are some meta choices like Cryo for Driller or the Stubby with the Engineer. Is this a good direction that the game is going, or should every weapon or overclock have some kind of good niche? So I think the biggest thing with this particular question is the idea of obviously the meta. And the issue with that is in any game that you're in, regardless of what it is, whether it's competitive, cooperative, whether it's casual or it's serious, there is going to be a meta. Regardless of how much you try to make it not the case, there will always be something that is going to very slightly outperform everything else, which is then going to make it meta. Even if it's by a very small percentage or a small factor, once the community realizes, hey, this one thing makes you 0.5% more effective at dealing damage, everyone is just going to say that that's meta. So there's not really going to be a way for you to stop dealing with the meta if that's part of the question. But in terms of you asking if it's a good direction for the game to go in, and if every weapon or overclock should have some kind of good niche, I think we're already in a good position where every overclock does kind of have its own position that it can be in, except Burst Fire for the GK2, but we've already talked about that. And what makes PvEs type games like DeepRockGalactic very enjoyable are the fact that a lot of those super hyper meta choices don't really come into play unless you're playing at the very high top, and which you don't necessarily have to. In the low to mid tier, you really can use whatever you want and you're going to be completely fine, and you don't need to worry about meta at all. And really, you shouldn't worry about meta, period, to begin with. It really only comes into play when you're trying to make the highest difficulties a lot more efficient, which again is something you don't really need to do. I don't think it's a direction that the game itself is going in as much as I think it's just a direction that gaming in general has just been in for a long time. Whether it's a PvE game or a PvP game, people like to try to solve it and try to figure out what's best and what's not as good. And people just like to gravitate towards whatever is the most efficient and just kind of ignore everything else. But in DeepRock, I think we are in a good position where pretty much every weapon is distinct enough to the point where they all have their uses, and all the overclocks as well fill a significant niche or use, to at least to some degree, that make them all pretty viable. So I don't think the game is going in a bad direction in that case. I think some of the overclocks could obviously be buffed or tuned a little bit, but for the most part, I think it's in a pretty good position. Have you ever beaten an elite deep dive by yourself? No, but I'm working on it. So this guy kind of cheated, and he asked like 4 questions in one, and they're a little bit wordy, but basically they're summarized as: how did my channel start? Do I take suggestions? Am I scared of my channel getting too big? And am I bored of DRG? I'll try to answer them relatively quickly, and I'm actually going to start with the last one. Have I been bored with DeepRockGalactic? Yes, but not in the way that I think people are worried about. Like, I'm not bored of playing the game entirely. I still very much enjoy playing the game. I play it several times a week, and I very much enjoy the gameplay loop. It's just a case of, for me, because I've gotten all the overclocks and I've gotten all the stuff that I can really get that actually changes the way the gameplay works. For me, the cosmetic grind isn't quite as important as it is to a lot of people, which if that is important to you, that's perfectly fine. It's just, for me, it's not that big of a deal to go towards. I still very much enjoy the gameplay loop of DeepRock, and every time I play it, I very much enjoy it. And it's also one of those things where sometimes I'm like, do I really feel like playing DeepRock today? But then once I start getting into the actual loop, I start to realize, oh yeah, I definitely did want to play because this is still very fun. There are just times where sometimes I just don't feel like it that day, whatever the case may be. Either something new comes out, or I've been binging something else recently, and sometimes I just want to change it up a little bit. Again, a lot of it comes back to my ADHD, to where I just have a hard time focusing on one thing for a long period of time, but nothing will keep me away from it for more than like a couple of days to maybe a week at most. And that sometimes is just because I have something else that I have to do that week. How do you think you'll react or adapt when your community grows larger? That, I think, is something that I will have to worry about in the future, and that's a problem for future me. I will very much like it when I get a much bigger community, because it just means I'll have an easier time supporting myself. But yes, I do think I will lose a lot of that sort of small hometown YouTuber type look to it, which I'm sure a lot of people are also worried about. But I'm going to try really hard to make sure that I don't forget the people who helped me get this far, and the people who are regularly watching my stuff. I feel like that's a thing where a lot of content creators get to at a certain point, but it's one that I'm going to try to deal with as best I can. But again, I don't have any clear promises about that for right now. Am I taking suggestions for other things to play? All the time. The only real problem is that making content about them is kind of difficult, and that just kind of comes down to the YouTube algorithm. A lot of the times when I make stuff about things that are not DeepRock related that I really wanted to make, they don't really do too well, and that's just because of either the algorithm, the way YouTube pushes it, or just the people who watch my stuff just don't want to watch anything besides DRG stuff. So I will always take suggestions for things to try out, stream, or anything like that, but whether or not I make a video about them might not necessarily be the case. And as for why I decided to start my channel, I will probably save that for a whole video in the future, so stay tuned for that at some point in the future, but I do enjoy the question. Thank you very much. When do I stream in general? 3 days a week. I usually stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday from usually around 10:30 or 11, and I stream for about 2.5, maybe 3 hours, and that's Eastern Standard Time, so compare that to whatever time zone that you're in right now. And typically I do try to stream 3 days a week, and if I can't do one of those days, I will push it back to a day prior or a day later. For example, the day I'm recording this, I actually was not able to stream because I'm a little bit behind on work, but I will then stream the day afterwards. So typically 3 days a week is when I do stream. I see a lot of YouTubers trying to specialize, find a niche that they can fill a lot. Do you fall into that camp of early YouTubers, or do you wish to diversify your content in the future? So this kind of falls into the same thing that I answered before, where yes, I do want to diversify my content a good amount, but the only problem is once YouTube puts you into that little box, it's really, really hard to get out of that box, because they know the type of people that want to see your content. And so trying to push them out is very difficult. Recently, I actually put up a post, which some of you may have seen, where I essentially asked people what their reaction is when I put something on the channel that's not DeepRock related. Now, thankfully, a lot of people did what I had assumed and said that they might not necessarily know exactly what the video content is, but if it's something that they might like, they might watch it. But what was more interesting was the second most chosen option was people who just straight up said, I don't watch it, I'm only here for your DeepRock content. And that to me is kind of the issue that a lot of early YouTubers have to get through at some point in time, is when you are in a set box, a set situation that YouTube has put you in, it's really hard to break out of it unless you are either really, really good or already have a big enough viewer base to where you can make that change and still have a good enough amount of people follow you to where you will be able to have a good following once you do that. When you're first starting off on YouTube, you do kind of have to pick a niche at some point in time, and that's kind of what you have to focus on a little bit. But yes, I do want to diversify my content, if that answers your question. It's just going to take a long time for me to get to that point where I can do it regularly. But as of right now, I will probably be sprinkling in a little bit of diversity content every now and then, but just not nearly as much as I would like to, because again, it just doesn't respond that well to people. Why and how did you choose to make content? Favorite underrated overclock. So the first part of the question, again, I will probably make a full video in the future talking about why I decided to start making YouTube and start the channel. But to make a very quick abridged answer, basically I went to school for graphic design and I took a lot of video editing courses and I actually really liked it. So I wanted to try to do something with that and sort of flex my, I guess, creative side. And that's essentially the short version of it. The real reason is a lot bigger than that, but again, I'll probably go into that in a little bit of a later video down the line. And as for favorite underrated overclock, lightweight cases for the breach cutter. Simple, effective, really good, is a solid option if you're ever going to use the breach cutters. That's what I have to say about that. Rock and stone? Rock and stone indeed. Can you tell us something about yourself, like where you are from and where you chose to do YouTube? So in terms of why I did YouTube, again, I'll talk about that probably a little bit later. But as for where I'm from, I guess I can kind of say where I'm from because I just recently moved, but I am from the US, of course, the United States of America, and I'm originally from Southern New Jersey. Grew up my entire life down there and recently moved a little bit more inland and have always just been kind of a more reserved person who just likes gaming and likes sitting in front of computers a lot more often, so that's kind of why I started doing YouTube in the first place. But in terms of where I'm from, I'm an East Coast boy, born and raised.
This has nothing to do with the video, but this is my little girl Maggie, and she wants to say hi. Yeah, to the people, Maggie. Oh,
she doesn't like being on camera. You may hear her meow a couple of times throughout the course of the rest of the video because she is apparently attention deprived for right now. Favorite dwarf voice lines. Honestly, my favorite one's probably just leave no dwarf behind. That's probably a really simple one. It's good. It solidifies everything that I love about the dwarves, and that's probably my favorite one. Are you planning to try more indie games? If you do, there's a game called Crab Champions that just went on Early Access 9. It's by a guy who made Crab Rave. You should 100% try it out. It's only $10 USD. So that kind of goes into the whole suggestion thing. I might try it out. I do like indie games every now and then. I don't usually do specific ones. Cat is scratching her head against the screen, so it's going to be a little shaky for the moment. I do very much like playing indie games. They are very enjoyable to me. In fact, most of the fun games that I've played are indie games. I think indie games are, in my opinion, like one of the heart of the gaming industry, especially right now, since AAA studios are kind of dropping the ball in a lot of ways, but that's a whole section for a different video. But to answer the question, I guess, yes, I do plan on trying more indie games. Whether or not I make them into videos, it really just depends on what they are. Can you make a living from your videos? If not, what other jobs do you have? Well, thankfully, I am in a good position where between me and my lovely wife, we make enough to where we can sort of support ourselves with me just doing this, which is very nice, and I'm very, very blessed to be in a position like that. I've had a couple other jobs in the past, over the past couple of years, but thankfully I can consistently do this without really having to worry too much. So thankfully, yes. What was the first time you heard of DRG and what got you interested in it? So a buddy of mine who honestly has just as bad of gaming ADHD as I do, basically just showed it to me one day years ago before seasons were even a thing. And he basically said, hey, this game looks really cool. You just play as a bunch of dwarves and you go around mining and it's got like roguelike stuff in it. Like, all right, I'll try it out. And I tried it. And at first, honestly, I thought it was really cool, but I didn't really stick with it a whole lot. Again, because there was probably a lot of other stuff coming out at the time that just took my attention away from it. But then years later, I came back to it and thought to myself, wow, this game is really good. I never really thought about how good this was. So I didn't really hear anything about it for a long time. And then again, my buddy of mine just told me about it and got me hooked immediately. Will you try Hunt Showdown 1896? That's actually on my list of things to eventually try out. It's just a little bit terrifying because those types of extraction shooters I'm usually not that good with and I kind of get a little overstressed out about, but I might try it out eventually. Since DRG will keep updating its stuff with new content or changes, any chance that you will update your old videos that cover weapons, overclocks, and other things related to gameplay? So this is something that I have actually been thinking about recently. I'm curious as to whether or not I should update those videos or just make new ones. I kind of have been doing that so far with my class guides. I've sort of been remaking them, although I have to finish those ones. Eventually, as more stuff comes out, yes, I probably will do things in the future. But if it's a case of one mod or one overclock gets changed or adjusted or added in, I don't think it's necessarily pertinent for me to completely make a whole new video about that. I might do something very small regarding it, or just mention it in a group of a bunch of other things, kind of like I did with all the stuff they added in season 5. But in terms of completely going back and updating my stuff, that might be a whole lot of work, but I might do newer reviews further on down the line where I sort of redo the content, but in a much better way when I actually have a better grasp as to what I'm doing. But to answer the question, yes, I probably will do that eventually, but probably once it gets to the point where there's a lot more stuff for me to cover other than a couple of minor changes. What is a skill you would like to work on that you think would make your videos even better than they already are? Well, thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Be sure to check out Ron's channel if you haven't already. He's a great content creator as well. Honestly, I can answer this in its own video of itself, but I guess the best way to describe it, and this is going to sound horrible, but there's really no other way for me to describe it, but I guess make my videos a little bit more brain rotty. Now, I know that sounds bad, but what I mean is just kind of keep things a little bit more fresh and interesting. I see there's a ton of videos that I watch from other content creators that I watch that their videos just work so well because they just flash so many things on screen, and they get my ADHD going. So that's kind of what helps out a lot with that. And while I do like to make guide videos and make informative videos, I don't want them to just look like instructional manuals. I don't want them to be kind of boring and just sort of stale and have like constant pacing. I want to like mix them up, add some humor and stuff into it. But the problem is when I get to that point of me editing and trying to figure out the kinds of funny stuff I can add into videos, I kind of just brain block and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm a person who, if I really don't know what I'm doing or I get uncomfortable, I kind of just sink back into the stuff that is comfortable that I already know. So I don't really push the envelope a whole lot. So that's kind of one thing I would like to do a little bit more of, which is add in a little bit more humor, a little bit more like be able to jazz up my videos a little bit more for the people who don't want to just be viewing instruction manuals, I guess is the best way to describe it. What about co-op games do you like so much? And what co-op games do you recommend that aren't on your channel? I like co-op games a lot because I just think that the core of video games in general is just hanging out and playing with your friends and taking it easy and not stressing out too much. And in my opinion, a lot of the big competitive hyper shooters or competitive titles that are out there really just are super duper stressful. And to me, there's nothing better than just hanging out with your friends, hanging out with the boys, and just playing a game that you can all play together and enjoy yourselves in. That's why DeepRock is such a good example of that, because it is one of the premier co-op titles that I've played in my entire life. And there's a ton of other ones out there that I have shown on the channel that I've played off the channel. Again, a lot of the open world survival crafting games like Abiotic Factor, Valheim, V-Rising, things like that are all fantastic. But even things that are a lot more in-depth, like Baldur's Gate 3, I've had so much fun playing with some friends of mine. And even things like just stupid titles like Chained Together, Bloons Tower Defense, Lethal Company, Murky Divers, like all those types of games where it's just you and your buddies in a situation that you genuinely don't understand and just have to kind of figure stuff out. That is just so much fun to me. And that sort of feeling that it captures is what makes co-op games very fun to me. I do still like playing competitive games every now and then. It's just, if I had to pick one or the other, I would definitely choose co-op titles. How would you rework automated beam controller to make it both interesting and viable? So automated beam controller is the overclock for the shard diffractor, which gives it a lot more ammo, but basically makes it that way the beam has to fire until it's completely empty. And if you stop it manually, it burns a lot more ammo. It's kind of hard for me to say. I'm not into R&D, so it's hard for me to exactly say how I would make it a lot better. I would say maybe getting rid of the manually stopping, consuming 50% of the remaining charge would be a good start, because then it makes it so that way you're not punished nearly as much for trying to work with it. And maybe giving it some sort of increased damage output or just some sort of a reward for dumping the entire battery into an enemy. Again, I'm not really sure exactly what they could do with it, but I do think that something like that could be a step in the right direction, at least in my opinion. Do you think consoles should get mods even if it would take a while? I think that the problem with that doesn't come down to the devs so much as it just comes down to, that's a question you should be asking Microsoft and Sony, basically, because that's really the biggest problem with them. Is mods could in theory, yes, work on those platforms, but the problem is that the companies just don't want their systems to be compromised in that kind of a way, because if you mod something on a console, it's significantly harder and more taxing on the system itself than if you just mod something on PC, which is significantly easier. So do I think think console should get mods? Sure. Do I know how they're going to do it? Absolutely not. Opinions on the profanity booster mod. I know it can't be used for videos without facing demonetization, but it's really funny. I mean, you kind of said it yourself. Yes, it is very funny. It is very enjoyable to hear that kind of stuff, but yeah, it does make videos a little bit harder to make because the demonetization police kind of shows up very quickly. If you like using it, you like using it. That's one of those mods where I'm like, go for it if you want to use it. It's no big deal. And that is all the questions that I was able to answer. There were a bunch more, but these are the ones that I really wanted to touch on. And these kinds of questions were great. I loved them. And be sure to keep asking questions either through comments or through Discord, or I'll probably do another post like this in the future if I do want to answer more questions. And again, I cannot say how grateful I am to have reached 20,000 subscribers. It really does mean a lot to me, you guys, the fact that people show up and watch my stuff no matter what it is, and that you're willing to listen to a guy like me who, quite frankly, really does not know a lot about what he's talking about, and just still be able to sit here and enjoy this community. It has been a tremendous pleasure and honor to be blessed with a community like this, and I really do appreciate you guys immensely. And thank you to everybody who posted your questions as well. Again, check out Ron if you haven't. Thank you again, Ron, for asking that question. It was very nice of you. And let me know if you like this kind of Q&A type stuff, because I might do this a little bit more often in the future. Maybe not a yearly thing, maybe a semi-regular thing. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, let me know. And I hope you guys found this video informative and entertaining. If you did, please be sure to let me know by hitting that like button, and consider becoming a member today, as it really helps me out a lot. Rock and Stone Minders, I'll see you in the next video.